Political systems that's characterized by legalized bribery. That's a lot of the problems. And, you know, right now we're seeing a resurgence in the labor movement, and United Auto Workers, John Deere workers are ready to spearhead that movement.
But in a lot of ways, corporate media had us believing that we're just lucky to have a job. We're lucky. If you're still at a place that still offers insurance and you're not paying, you're lucky, right? Well, what's happened is these corporations, even though they're competitors, have joined together, formed more or less a union of themselves to make us believe that we're lucky.
Problem is, and Jim Morrison touched on it over 50 years ago, whoever controls the media controls the mind. And depending on what flavor of corporate media you're drinking, you know, they develop this narrative, and, you know, that, you know, we're a system of entitlement.
You know, you got pizzas, a lot of cranberry juice, wood, obviously. You got the barrels there with the heat. We're actually going across a train track right now.
I ask everybody that lives in Davenport to call your city alderman and to call your mayor and to tell them to not back John Deere, to back the workers who are their constituents who sit there and pay the taxes. We need this city to back the workers.
I go and I trade my labor for a wage. You're not giving me nothing. I'm making that wage. I'm out there working for you, performing a service, and I need to be able to participate in that.
This is basically a 40-year bubble that's kind of popping. We live in the United Corporations of America, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. We're the richest country in the world, right? We brag about that, yet we've got the majority of our people, which are the working class, that are going out every day and being forced for both spouses to have a job in order to get ahead in this life. But when what you call getting ahead, if that's a new car or a boat, an occasional weekend at the lake, or a week's vacation or two, ultimately what's really, I feel, suffering is the very fabric of what this country was built on. That's our families.
And honestly, since we've been here, all you hear is cars honking. It's really, really. I mean, I don't think I've seen any cars that pass by without honking. So obviously, the community is in on this.
Fundamentally, this is union busting. This is strike busting. This is using the state and the law to try to make it as difficult and uncomfortable and unpleasant as possible for those workers to engage in their lawful right to go on strike.
Absolutely. There's departments in there that work 10, 11-hour days, 5 days a week, and then do it at least 6 or 8 on a Saturday. And only because they have to make money somehow. They're not making money off their KIP plan, so they got to make it off overtime.
I understand that you have to create shareholder value. That's the purpose of a corporation. But if you don't take care of your workers who created that wealth, then you're going to have some issues. And, you know, with the proposals they've came back with, it's really a testament to their arrogance, their audacity, and, you know, how classless they are.
Electoral power is one thing, but having actual power, you know, those workers that are on the picket line right now in front of Deere, they are exercising actual power. It's not a performance, it's not a show, it's not a rally. It is actually forcing Deere to say, oh, wow, this is hurting, we need to do something here.
You know, we don't want a bigger slice of pie, we want a bigger pie. And I'm paraphrasing and quoting Walter Reuther there. You better bring a bigger bucket of money to the table, treat your workers fairly and with equity is what we're asking.
We're just a number to them. We're as replaceable as a light bulb. So
you see this massive rat, and the rat is signifying the replacement workers, what they call the scabs.
We all feel it over here. Everybody on the wage side feels the theft. They feel our money going away. I mean, what we made 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, is more than we're making in 2021, 2022. And where's the money going when we're seeing shareholder value increase the way that it has, and our corporate executives living lavishly and collecting all the salaries and stuff? It's disappointing, to say the least. And
Democrats and Republicans alike have sold labor out. You can look at that with some of the disastrous trade deals that we've done. You know, Joe Biden, you know, proclaims to be the most pro-union president in history. Where's he at? Where's he talking now? You know, he's not supporting us. You know, come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's really was, in my opinion, kind of a disgrace, really, what they offered us. Had this been maybe 2015, a little different deal, maybe. On the cusp of the profits that they're making, absolutely not.
The entire world is watching you, and Waterloo is the tip of the spear at the fight in the spear that is going to go into the heart of corporate greed. Thank you, brothers and sisters. This idea that they're making all kinds of crazy high wages just isn't true. And all they're trying to do is just get a sniff of the American dream. You know, one of the first few days of the strikes, this strike here, and it happened here in Waterloo, some salaried folks tried to start running the stuff. They drove a tractor into a electrical box, right? You know, so clearly it's almost like these folks know what they're doing, you know, and their labor's worth it.
The gap between the top percent and the bottom 90% of us is getting wider and wider and wider each year. We cannot continue to allow those small percentage of people control our destiny. The union represents the voice of the people. The union represents the voice of the people, and we must stand behind you not only for your sake, right, and our sake, but for those who came before us, our ancestors, and for those that are coming after us, our descendants.
I loved your speech, so I wanted to get you over here. You're really seeing something special, like an energy that I haven't seen in a while, and I've been around the country. Could you kind of talk about what's it like here? Because it seems like this is camaraderie, but also something that's been bottled up for many years.
That's right. It's a movement, literally. And we've seen movements across the country for the past couple of years. And we're also seeing people are sick and tired of being sick and tired, as Fannie Lou Hamer said. They're sick and tired of being taken advantage of. They're sick and tired of the top 5% getting all the wealth, and those of us on the bottom, you know, are struggling to make ends meet, living from paycheck to paycheck, just one paycheck away from bankruptcy in many instances. And so it's time for us to come together, and people are sensing that. I think people should have hope, but they'll put their feet behind the hope, put some action to it, because as long as they sit back on the sidelines, as long as they say, woe is me, they can't really complain about things. So we have to be a part of the movement. Everyone has to be a part of the movement, even if it means taking a cup of coffee, right, or making some phone calls. Do your part, because if we don't do our part, everyone will suffer.
So got the flag here. You got the barrel. They're trying to get the fire going because it's hot. It is definitely cold out here. If you can tell, the rain, the wind, but people are still out here. So that shows you their dedication. A major issue, not only with this company, these strikes, is the fact that, I mean, the American dream was supposed to have like a vacation from time to time, sure. Be able to buy a car, you know.
You go to work 40 hours a week and at some point in time in the summer, you get to enjoy some time with your family, the people that you're working for, right? And you know, that's pretty much a gone deal, because it's the vacation time's dictated by companies. Maybe you don't make enough money that a decent or elaborate vacation is even a possibility, you know.
Look, corporate media controls the narrative, and that's what's fed to people every day. And, you know, to control workers, to keep this perpetuation of a system of legalized bribery, you know, you have to divide people. And the simplest way to do that is, you know, the way they do it now. And, you know, whether you're wearing a red jersey or a blue jersey, you know, the thing I always tell people is that, you know, I love this Martin Luther King quote, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but, you know, we all came in on different ships, but we're in the same boat now.
And now we're in a time where we're so divided And I saw that coming even before the 2016 election. I knew that, and I honestly, to be honest, I don't believe it would have mattered if Hillary won or Trump. We just seen where we're at today.
But when you have a 40-year controlled demolition led by corporations, led by the media that props up the corporations, that bubble's going to pop at some point.
You know, I expected support from the community, but what we've received has been absolutely overwhelming. We've literally had so many donations pouring in. We've had money donations. We've set up an account at Fairway to supply our strike kitchen, so we make sure we have hot meals and hot food for our picketers. But really, it's been a community event.
My grandmother worked at a bakery in Ottumwa back in the day. She was a widow raising 2 kids. It was a unionized bakery. She couldn't afford the union dues. So the union let her take notes during their meeting and made her her secretary so she could be in the union. So she was working. The union looked out for her. There was a new procedure for wrapping bread that the bakery was making, so they made sure she got that job. It paid a little more. She was a widow raising 2 kids. So when men came back from the war, they were saying the women in the workforce were taking the men's jobs. And so the union said, no, this was a new job, came up during the war. She's not taking a job from anybody. It's her job as long as she can do it. Well, then she had a hysterectomy. And she went back to work. But part of her job was to carry the this sheet with the bread on it from point A to point B. And, you know, her doctor didn't want her to do it. She had to work. I mean, this is a woman who, when the Ottumwa had their flood, walked across a flooded bridge to get home to her kids. So the union helped her keep her job. Some union guy took that bread for her until she could carry it herself. This is generational. Unions are important. And Waterloo supports the union.
You know, it's been widely reported about the current administration's relationship with the big developers who are his primary campaign donors. A lot of these relationships result in no bid contracts with the city, and the misuse and abuse of the 485A tax abatement program, where, you know, the program is intended for adaptive reuse projects that include housing units, but we're seeing this be used and there's no housing created. So I think that the difference in a Walton administration is that we're going to prioritize smaller scale development, and it's going to be a fair process. We're going to give city contracts for development. We're going to use dollars that are intended to serve poor communities to serve poor communities, right? When we've seen folks skirt the law to be able to extract from our communities and use dollars that are supposed to be dedicated to creating affordable housing to do otherwise, and we're going to make sure that that no longer is the case.
And also, you know, he was really drilling on you, trying to claim you don't have experience, what have you. But I mean, from what I could tell, he's been in for almost parts of 2 decades. I mean, the crime rate has gone up significantly. I think Buffalo has a 30% poverty rate. Mm-hmm. And, you know, frankly, other than that renewal that he's talking about, this is one of the poorest cities for its size in the country. So I don't really know. I mean, the media here, there's only one real media outlet. But from what I've seen, just in brief research, they don't really get into any of that. But they kind of just his campaign slogan. But it doesn't seem like he's been super successful if poverty is the way it is or crime is the way it is.
I mean, you know, one could argue that the renaissance that has benefited the elite and the wealthy of this community is enough. And, you know, we just need more time for it to trickle down. But when you talk to people who are working every day, When you talk to people who are still struggling to make ends meet, when you speak to folks who've had their small businesses shutter as a result of the pandemic, they're not feeling like they're enjoying in that renaissance. What are we doing for the little guy who tends to be the majority of us in Buffalo? Buffalo is, like you said, the third poorest city of its size in the nation. So it's not as if all of us are chilling on our boats on the weekend. You know, most of us are hardworking, blue collar union members who are working hard and bringing home less of our money, spending more on housing, spending more on food. We've not seen wages keep up with the rates of inflation. We've not seen good quality jobs being generated out of this administration. And, you know, I want everyone to enjoy a high standard of living and the quality of life that all people who live in Buffalo deserve.
And I wanted to talk to you because you were speaking about just the basically controlled demolition of the working class here in Buffalo. What's your name? And talk about kind of your experience in Buffalo and why India and her election is so important.
Well, my name is John Washington, member Working Families Party on the state board and an organizer. As India said, I met India when we were running a campaign to start a land trust in the Fruit Belt because there are over 400 vacant lots just in this, from like that light to that light and 4 blocks that way, there are 400 vacant lots. And 200 were owned by the city, and we wanted to run a campaign to control them because people in this neighborhood have been taking care of those lots, and they watched as developers started to be able to buy them underneath their feet. Byron Brown ran a 5 and 5 program that was 5,000 demolitions over the course of 5 years. He continued after that program to demolish another 3,000 houses. And what he wanted to do was make this land shovel ready for developers. And it's part of the divestment scheme. He cut deals with Palladino, Sinatra, all these other developers around driving the price of property down while giving them away free tax breaks. And when Cuomo came in with the Buffalo Billion and all that, it flipped. And so we had a generation of homes that were demoed unnecessarily. Some of them did need to be, but it wasn't what the community said, right? It was what they wanted. It was in strategic places like right here, like the edge of the city. And that's why you see this is the emptiest part of the city. You go up to Hamlin Park, other places, you don't see that. And so it's incredibly strategic. It's part of how gentrification works. And India and I and many others fought hard for the past 10 years to push back against gentrification. And we had a lot of great ideas. And he was in the way of every single one of them. And I'm just so proud of her for being the one to step up and say, you know what, we're not going to struggle anymore. We're going to win, and we're going to run this city out of the abundance that is here, the 8,000 lots being used for food, fruit, whatever people in those neighborhoods want. And so I'm honored and excited and see this, as an extension of the work that we've been doing for a long time to take control of our city back from developers.
It's interesting. I've been in South Bend, Flint, Detroit. Same story everywhere. I call it economic terrorism, gentrification, because the media and the politicians frame it as like, oh, the Renaissance, the economic revival. Yeah, they're making like 10 to 15 blocks very pretty and leaving the rest of the city to rot. And I've only been here for a few days, but I mean, there's parts of Buffalo that, are completely destroyed. While if you drive 15 minutes down the road, it's very nice. You have brand new restaurants, brand new bars, brand new Whole Foods around this neighborhood. So, I haven't seen one India Walton sign in this whole neighborhood. Right down Byron Brown, right down Byron Brown. On the left, right down Byron Brown. Elect Mayor Brown. Right down Byron Brown. In so many cities, it is a tale of two cities where you can be in this area in North Buffalo that have nice suburban homes. They obviously seem to be supporting one candidate. And then you go, I don't know, we could probably drive 10 to 15 minutes from here. It is, in some areas, it looks like a war zone or a bomb has been dropped. Empty lots, a sea of empty lots, really, really poor, really, really impoverished, and India Walton signs. So now we're on the east side of Buffalo. Definitely more impoverished. Majority black. India Walton sign. Less signs in general. But you can see vacant lots. Vacant lots. vacant lots. Looks pretty similar to parts of Flint, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee. It's definitely not where we just were. 15-minute drive. Whatever happens tomorrow, do you think the focus on these areas that have been left behind, there will be, kind of follow through with that, whether you're the mayor or he's the mayor, because obviously gentrification is now kind of at the forefront?
Well, no matter who is the mayor in January, communities like the ones that we're standing in right now have had a spotlight shined on them that hasn't been before, and I'm committed to continuing to do the work to make sure that we get housing for folks, that we get good living wage jobs, and I think that there are ways to do that outside of being in the mayor's seat. So I'll continue to work with advocates and broad-based coalitions across the city of Buffalo, the state of New York, and the country to make sure that we get justice for our people.
For the progressive movement, by and large, whatever you want to call it, because they've been focused on the S word here, do you think this has broader implications if you're victorious here for progressive candidates elsewhere?
I mean, I think it's already proven that, progressive grassroots campaigns are viable.
The focus is on cutting the police budget, but there's not as much focus on the fact that Buffalo has the third highest poverty rate in America, and this man's been mayor for 16 years. Whatever you think of India Walton, it seems to me part of the big reason for crime is you have such poverty, and people don't. You're seeing development in certain parts of town, while other parts of town are just being left to kind of rot. So isn't the mayor kind of responsible for that tale of two cities?
To a certain extent, the county executive, their social services is just as important, making sure families have the resources they need. It comes down to parenting in a household, no control. Once again, child protection services stepping into the households, telling families what to do. That's the real problem. No control in the households.
He's the mayor, and you got 43% child poverty. So, at a certain point, you might think India Walton's too extreme or whatever, but doesn't there need to be a new face if the things he's trying have not worked in terms of poverty?
Yeah, India is going to try to undo everything Mayor Brown did. I mean, I cannot sit up here and say he was a bad mayor, but sit up here to undo everything he did.
Tell me what he did, because I'm not from here, so I want to know. All I see is like real nice development downtown and by the waterfront. A lot of focus there and no focus pretty much anywhere else.
Right around the corner from us is the Northland workforce. They're begging young people to come in and get a trade right now. It's right around the corner. When you leave from over here, right over there. They invested so much money for the people right here in this community. It don't make sense that people from not in the city is coming to advance their lives and careers when it was made for us, so why not take advantage of it? Trades right now is a big need. They're always going to be around. They're paying good wages. So I do believe right here on the east side, the Northland workforce is here to build up our young people and build up who want to be built up.
You don't think Mayor Brown has basically focused way too much on development downtown by the waterfront, a lot less investment on the east side, communities that are falling apart? I mean, we see the Republicans that are pouring in money to his campaign. I mean, whether you like Walton or not, it just seems to me this is your typical Democrat who's handed a city to real estate developers and then made it seem like it's a renaissance when I've been driving around. Most of the city is falling apart.
We do need some more investments in the city, but you know what? We also need a development downtown. Our downtown still need a lot of work. A lot of us, we go out of town and visit other places and we say, wow, we wish we had that here. So now that we finally is getting great businesses and great developers like Douglas Jamal, I mean, many other people would love to have him in their city. But you know what? He focusing on the city of Buffalo. So I don't believe all development is bad. I mean, that's how we get revenue. That's how we attract people. That's how we bring people here to Buffalo.
Unfortunately, the data shows it hasn't. I mean, it's brought real estate developers. It's brought kind of upper middle class white folks to downtown, but it hasn't helped the material conditions of working class people, black people, brown people in the community. So that's why, and it's not just here. I mean, you're talking cities all over the country that have real bad gentrification problems. It hasn't really lifted the wages and, you know, helped security for working class people.
I will say this, and I hate, you know what? It starts with us. You know, we can't always sit around blaming the other person. We all have the same opportunities like everyone else. I started from the bottom. I had Section 8, I had food stamps, I had Medicaid. I worked at McDonald's for 7 years, but it gotta be up to you to decide you don't want that no more. Now I'm a homeowner. I took civil service exams to get a better job. It's opportunities out here. We just had to go after it, or maybe we just had to better encourage, you know, it's opportunities out here. We can't continue just blaming someone for the reason why we're not.
Well, you don't need to blame, but you have the power to elect. So if somebody's been mayor for 16 years, it might not be completely his fault, but if poverty is the same as it was when he came in, if child poverty is worse, I mean, before the pandemic, conditions were probably not so swell. The pandemic accelerated that. Talk about what was going on in here in terms of staffing, understaffing, kind of chaos, whatever you could share.
Before the pandemic, the staffing was like getting rough, but I still had like the 1 to 5. 1 to 6, sometimes 1 to 7, but that was like on a rough night. And then right after the pandemic started, like last year or whatever, I started getting like more patients. I'd be like 1 to 8, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. And now we're up to like 1 to 10 on nights, and I'm like, oh my God, I have 10. But then when we have 8, I'm like, blessed, I have 8 patients today. Like, I shouldn't be saying that. Having 8 patients is not okay to take care of. You know, they're all sick. They all need something. I'm not passing meds. I'm not finishing passing my med pass until like 12 o'clock. People want their pain meds and they're waiting for hours because I'm like, I can't come back to you right now. Or they're sitting in their stool and their urine for hours because I can't change them. There's no staff to help me change them and roll them. I'm like, I'm sorry, like, I'm gonna come back to you like on my next round.
In addition to the understaffing, did you have enough equipment for yourself to be safe?
No equipment. We didn't have urinals. Sometimes the beds don't work, which is ridiculous because we can't put the bed alarm on someone. How are we going to know they're going to get up, you know? And then we're supposed to round like hourly, but that's not happening when we're having 10 patients, 8 patients, you know? It just, yeah.
I went to even empty a urinal and get a patient cleaned up, and there weren't even gloves. And that wasn't even just in that room. I went to a neighboring room, and there weren't gloves. So then I went to my cart where I was having my medications, and there weren't gloves.
Talk about this hospital. You know, every hospital is different. Some are nonprofits, but still are making money hand over fist. I assume Mercy Hospital has been doing fairly well over the years while basically leaving you guys to makeshift urinals and no staff. What's the hospital been doing in terms of profit?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure. I know they're have to be kind of making some kind of money because they're building a new hospital like in Lockport or like another town over. So clearly they have some kind of money somewhere, but they can't allocate it to the staff. They're going to allocate it somewhere else.
So they've specifically said, like, oh, you're doing such a good job. We're getting, like, letters from patients saying you're doing a good job. So it's almost like even though we're still doing a good job and we still care and we're still trying hard, it's more of, like, because you can, you have to.
Like, on my floor specifically, they added an extra room. So what it used to be a room for like to do echoes, like and like heart, whatever, ultrasounds, and somehow the next day I came back and they switched it to a patient's room, so they can add more patients. So we're originally like a 48 bed unit, and then they added the extra room, and I ask people, I'm like, how is this possible when we don't even have the staff to take care of the 48 patients we have now? The COVID patients are horrified. They're so scared because like they're stuck in isolation. Their family members can't visit them. Like I can't imagine like this is the face that they see, and it's not even like my face. It's like a mask and like a full gown PPE screaming to them because they can't hear me. Because whether they have a high flow mask, like it's like this hot air blowing up your nose, like at like 100% oxygen, like it's painful, it's super loud, it can get sweaty for them, like they're uncomfortable, they're crying, they miss their family, they just want to get better. It's sad. It's a sad sight.
And normally, like, we could have the honor of being one of those visitors and people to take care of those patients, considering they can't have family, they can't have visitors. some of them don't even have smartphones to like FaceTime family. My grandfather was actually recently here on a COVID unit, and the fact that he didn't have visitors for nearly 2 weeks, and the staff taking care of him was the only people that he saw for that amount of time. That is just very unfortunate that we don't even have the time to see.
It doesn't sound like the staff could adequately care.
Right. It's basically like factory line working, going through a patient, giving them their meds, giving their assessment. I can't even like have a full-blown conversation. I'm like, oh, are you in pain? How are you feeling? Like, I'll ask my orientation questions, and that's like basically the conversation.
You guys are going on 30 days. It's not easy to go on strike. Obviously, it seems like they're threatening your benefits now, your health care, important for healthcare workers. What has been their response? Do you think they're operating in good faith? Are they negotiating in good faith? Have they basically told you to take a hike? What has been the response?
Personally, I don't think they're bargaining in good faith. They're like from the union and like the bargaining team. I don't really speak for them, but like I know like they'll post like, oh, we're still waiting for Catholic Health to come up. Like they do no call, no shows. Like the bargaining team is waiting hours on hours for whoever the bargaining team for Catholic Health is to come and talk to them. And
not showing up.
Yeah, they don't show up, or they show up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, here you go. Like, you can't expect someone to like read this whole paperwork and say, yeah, this is okay, at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, you need to be sleeping, you know? Yeah. And then like our environmental staff, the people who are like cleaning the COVID rooms, cleaning everybody's rooms, cleaning like the blood and guts off operating tables, like they're paid like $13 an hour. That's not even minimum wage. They can go to Tim Hortons and make $20 an hour and not have to deal with the risks that they're doing here, you know?
So talk to the audience. Obviously understaffing. What are some of the other demands you guys have been making?
In the beginning, they proposed to take away like our health insurance. They wanted to give us a high deductible health insurance. They wanted to do that. They didn't want to give us like a huge wage increase. Oh, and they wanted to get rid of our pension. Oh, so like, yeah. So like all the senior nurses, not only are they're not getting the wage, their pension is being frozen. And like, what?
You know, I'm not in the industry, but I could imagine like one wrong decision could mean a life or death. One wrong administering a medication or something not sterilized or whatever. So if you're running around like insanity, 8 patients when you should have like 4, mentally, physically stretched thin, who's going to suffer?
Right.
Patients.
Right. Literally, exactly. Like with the 10 patients I have, I'm like focusing on 10 million tasks. Like I'm good at multitasking, but like if I have like 3 critical patients that are all sick, like you can't manage them all. And like I'm scared to death I'm going to miss something. I go home at the end of my shift and I'll text my coworkers, hey, did I miss something? Like, what's going on with this patient? Are they okay? Like, should I call the doctor like sooner? Like, what is going on? You know, it's like, and like it's our license on the line. And if like something happens like detrimental, whose fault is that? Is it going to be my fault, the nurse who's running around with their chicken, like the head of the chicken cut off, whatever that terminology is, or is it the hospital's fault because they're not adequately staffing us? Right. Like this probably wouldn't have happened if I had 5 patients.
And what has been going on during this staff? Do they have like enough replacement work during this strike? Do they have enough replacement workers?
Oh yeah, they are hired by Huffmaster. So
Huffmaster, that's a whole nother story, but yeah, they are a preeminent strikebreaker company.
Yeah. So the nurses are making around $150 an hour. In the beginning, they were able to choose, like this is what we just heard, that like they were able to not have COVID patients. Like they were like, no, I don't want to take care of COVID patients. And they were only taking like 5 patient assignments. So it's like, how can you have this staffing ratio for the striker or for the scabs essentially, but you can't do it for your own staff?
Can you kind of talk about what it's been like energy-wise and solidarity-wise here on strike?
Solidarity is there. We're still strong. The community has been outstanding. We get community support almost every day. All the different labor unions and stuff have come by. A lot of the politicians have stopped and, just told us that, stay strong. And I think we've gotten people from out of state that have come in and told us that, they're very pleased with what we're doing, that our fight here is not only for here, but it's nationwide to help healthcare. So it does make us feel better that what we're doing is bigger than us. So it, makes us a little prouder for what we're doing. I mean, I think it's a shame that healthcare has come to this and that the hospital's making us go through this and that they can't just settle this contract.
We all know about Trump's fence and build the wall. Well, Amazon has literally erected a wall within the past, or a fence within the past few weeks to make it harder for workers here to unionize. I guess they're taking what they did in Alabama, doubling and tripling down. So I'm here with Derek Palmer. You still work in the warehouse, and you've kind of been leading, along with Christian, who was fired, and a couple others. You're kind of leading this effort to pick up the mantle, I guess, from Alabama and try to get the first union in America with Amazon. So you recently filed with the National Labor Relations Board a grievance because they're already union busting. So I want to get into that. Christian Smalls, everybody should know, he was fired right at the beginning of the pandemic for the sin of, I guess, asking Amazon to care about worker safety. And there's a major lawsuit that the Attorney General of New York has filed, largely because of Amazon's illegal actions in firing Chris. Jason used to work here. Jerry, they fired. So we got basically a lineup of wear it as a badge of honor, I guess, fired Amazon workers and one who's still there. So let me ask you first. Obviously, Amazon in Alabama, we saw unprecedented union busting. So were you already thinking when Alabama was going on? Let me start it here. How did the wheels get set in motion? Because, by the way, this is the tent that they're trying to get people to sign up, union cards and all that.
So definitely during the Alabama union drive is when we decided, you know what, I think we should give it a shot. But we wanted to wait on the outcome of the Alabama union drive. So after the drive was over, we decided to pick it up and start our own thing in Staten Island.
And talk about already, when did they put up this fence? And what was the reasons that they gave?
Well, they put it up after one of our barbecues. We held a barbecue for all associates, to come and get some real food, versus the food inside of Amazon, and also to sign union cards and also get information about union cards as well. And right after the day after that barbecue, I guess they saw that it was a huge success. A lot of people were signing up. And then we came back, I believe the next day we weren't here, but the day after that we came back and the fence was here.
And I don't know if you could show them, John, but it's literally private property all over the fence, even though I believe we're on a public sidewalk. So in Amazon's world, it's private property. Amazon claims they didn't put up the fence. I guess the landlord put up the fence. I wonder who told the landlord put up a fence. But by putting up the fence, you guys were a little further down there, easier to get people off the bus. So you had to move down here, which was their goal, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess anything they could have done to stop us is what they did with the fence. That location was much better location. As you can see, we have the buses here. They stop right there where the fence is, or where it began, pretty much. So yeah, they're trying to do anything to stop us. So that fence was the first thing they did.
And inside, since you're inside there, are you already seeing Amazon signage and messages talking about how much they care about you and beware of those labor grifters?
Yeah, one thing that really stood out was the fact that they were saying beware of the vest. So I wore my ambassador vest. I'm a worker. I'm an ambassador. So they're saying beware of the vest, and don't talk to the people with the vest on. They're trying to say that we're misleading people, misleading the associates, which isn't true at all. I'm just showing you how long I've been here, and the amount of work that I put in. So people, associates, will relate to that basically. So that's one of the issues. Another one where they were saying that we're not sanctioned by Amazon to do what we're doing, which is crazy.
I think most corporations don't sanction people trying to unionize.
So that was another thing that stood out.
Christina, you used to work at Amazon with your sister, Pashan Brown, and Pashan was 38, and in January suddenly came home, told her sister her head hurt, and then the next day she passed away in her sleep. No major health problems. But the only thing we do know is that for months she was actually at Amazon in Virginia
administering COVID tests, the nasal swabs, up her coworkers' noses. Something that she had spoken with you about. Other workers said that they saw her doing the testing. Amazon would not speak with me on the record. They would not. They tried to sweep this under the rug. They actually, from what I know, intimidated workers there in that warehouse from even talking about your sister's death. So I want to start with, you know, your sister was doing this testing, and you and her, because you had worked at Amazon with her, you and her had rarely fought, but you had kind of gotten into it because you were worried about her bringing something home to your mother during COVID.
Yes, we got into it about 2 times about it. And the last time we got into it was December. And I told her, when I first brought it up to her and told her, is when she did the anonymous emails, and then she did the text message, and then she did the emails under her information.
Just so you guys know, she emailed her supervisors once as herself, identifying herself, asking, are you going to close the warehouse? This was at the beginning of the pandemic about a year ago. They were not cleaning properly in this Virginia warehouse, just like they weren't cleaning properly here. They weren't even cleaning the trays that you work on, that you move products. And then she emailed anonymously, even to the corporate headquarters in Seattle, basically saying that they're just totally disregarding us and our lives during this pandemic.
So yeah, the first was like May was when she May was when she started sending the emails, and she sent them from May up until I believe October, November. And the last time we got into it, we got in an argument about it was December, after Christmas, and then my sister passed in January. I just want to know. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, you know, we got to state the facts, and the facts is that she was working at Amazon Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. doing COVID testing. And she was not a doctor, nurse, a medical assistant, a medical profession, a CNA. She wasn't a RN. She wasn't anything. She came into Amazon to be a sorter. She had no business COVID testing. He had no business having employees COVID test. My sister was one of the first couple of employees who were doing COVID testing. She was trained by another employee to do COVID testing, and that employee was trained by another employee to do COVID testing. No one had ever came in, no doctor had ever came in to train, no nurse had ever came in to train. Why is this happening?
And also, when you see actual doctors or nurses do those swabs, they're head to toe covered. N95, goggles, gowns. Did your sister have any of that?
She didn't have any of that, and I asked her because we would be on FaceTime, and when she would get off when she would have to test somebody, she would get off the phone because you really can't be on your phone anyway in a warehouse. But she had the Amazon check mask on, and then she had a headband that she would wear, so she had the earpiece. And I asked her, I said, you don't even know how far to put that up somebody's nose. Why are you doing that? What if you hurt somebody? Who's going to be responsible for that? And she said, look, you know, they showed me what to do. And I told her I wouldn't, you can't do that. You could hurt somebody. If that thing goes too far up somebody's nose, I mean, I don't understand how there was no doctors to be trained. And I don't understand it. It's still now. And why didn't you have doctors? Why didn't you have people come in and be trained? Why didn't you have doctors come in and nurses come in? Why didn't you have them do it? Why did you have regular employees testing employees? And now this has happened, and it's 2 months of counseling that expires in less than 24 hours, and go on with your life?
Lots of people have asked, like, oh, why Starbucks? Like, why are you guys organizing? And I think, first and foremost, like, throughout the pandemic especially, we've been called essential workers. And just having lived through the pandemic and being called that and understanding that the conditions and the living standards that we have, it's just simply unacceptable. And I think we're trying to change the working conditions not only for Starbucks workers, but, you know, hopefully this leads to more people being able to say, you know, enough is enough. I also want a better working environment and an actual say in my workplace.
They gave us, completely against our wishes, 2 additional support managers, what they're supporting other than the anti-union campaign remains to be seen.
There's as many people they brought in here, almost as many, I believe, as people voting in the union election. That's the type of disruption you're not supposed to do. I'm a regular at a couple of the stores here. They've taken the stores that I know people at, and they disrupted them by doubling the size of the people at times. That's dangerous. 2 of our committee just got COVID. They were they were put into a work situation purely as a way to disrupt about the union.
The timeline, lines up that within those 12 days from like October 1st to the 12th is probably when we would have gotten COVID, right before we went out on isolation. And
the only thing that's really been different in my life is that I've been working with upwards of 10 to 15 or 10 extra people, 12, 13 extra people.
And that's just people on the floor. Like if we have 16 partners that are working on the floor, we also have like 4 to 5 managers that are hovering around in the lobby, in the back of house, talking to each other. The amount of people packed into that building tripled in that week. It's like, it would be hard to kind of attribute this to anything else solely because that change was so drastic.
And not even to mention the people who are coming in from all over the country. This is not like local or anything. Like if there's outbreak from travel or anything like that, like anything could be possible.
And, we can only see it as both a tactic to disrupt a very strong pro-union store, to, scare workers, to intimidate them, and to basically break their solidarity.
And we had to sit through 3 days of them basically telling us that not only are we essentially coffee robots that can just be put anywhere and assigned a position and we don't have to have any say in it, but that our managers who've worked very, very hard to take care of these stores and take care of us under these awful conditions don't actually have any say in what goes on.
We are worth living wages, and we are worth having safe working conditions.
But without baristas, there would be no Starbucks. Without people like us on the ground, we are what makes Starbucks what it is. And, Kevin Johnson just got a $20 million bonus over the pandemic. Well, we were the ones in the stores. Most of my coworkers got sick with COVID, if not all of them. So, just wanted to say too that Starbucks has the ability to raise living standards, and they've chosen not to.
It's usually the first 25, 30 minutes is them talking at us. And generally, at this point, it's all anti-union. It started off, the first 2 meetings were kind of, we're here to help you, you raised your hand, we're so excited to be here and fix things. And then they've gotten they've broken us into smaller groups. They've scheduled these so that the most vocal of us are in one group and the quieter people are in other groups. So it's blatantly obvious to us, and I'm sure that they know that. I'm just not so sure that they care.
Unions come out of, struggles of working class people from, the 1800s and before. And we know what a union is. We know what the values of a union are. It's to support working class people. So Starbucks was piecing together every, bad piece of information they could find on unions to create this kind of like a collage of anti-union messages. They were pulling, practices from the trade unions, from different sectors, to try to intimidate workers. They'll do anything but actually talk about, what unions actually do.
They also put up the financials of the union to try to explain that, the higher echelon of the union, as you will, are making lots of money, and that's my dues paying into their salary. So I asked them if I could see Starbucks financials, and they said, well, that's public information. And I said, well, this is all public information as well, but you spent time to make a 25-minute PowerPoint about it. I said, can you explain to me why I shouldn't be concerned that our CEO got a $20 million bonus in the middle of a pandemic, and I have partners who can't afford to pay their rent and put groceries in their fridge on the same week? They kept saying, well, the union is a business. And I said, as opposed to Starbucks non-for-profit? I mean, who are we trying to fool here?
You guys say you're not anti-union, yet this is the most anti-union thing I've ever seen in my life. How can you say that? And they were like, well, we're just giving you the facts. Well, it's like, okay, well, how come you can give your facts, yet when we try to provide information, you tell me that that's my opinion?
The entire last listening session was a 25-minute PowerPoint that ripped apart the Workers' United Constitution. It was fear-mongering, and I called it out as fear-mongering. I also asked if they could juxtapose with that Constitution with Starbucks' Constitution,
to which I was told they don't have a constitution. So I asked what they had, and they said, well, we have policies and procedures. And I said, okay, well, who votes on those policies and procedures? And they said, well, nobody. I said, so there's no democratic system set up that allows me to have a say in my workplace. Well, no. I said, well, that's not helpful to me.
I brought pamphlets to my store that were sitting in the back room, just like where they put their information out. And mysteriously, a group of corporate people came into my store, and then when I went back there after they left, all my pamphlets were gone.
But their whole issue with the union was it was third party going to come between us and our ability to communicate with one another. And like you just said, you've got partners who their stores have been flooded with corporate to the point where they don't even know who they're supposed to talk to anymore in the case of an emergency. And you have COVID and you've got to make 10 phone calls to get a hold. I mean, that's not the partner-to-partner communication they've been professing. So they've kind of hurt themselves in a lot of ways. They've been doing a lot of talking, and it's been a lot of sort of do as I say, not as I do.
I know partners that have been here for 10 years that have never had these listening sessions, which are apparently really common, and we should have in theory already.
That's what we've been seeing in the stores. I've never heard of that as a labor lawyer. We're working with organizers with, many decades of experience. Nobody involved in this campaign has seen anything like this.
But I believe, the anti-union efforts are going to only intensify now, especially now that we have a month-long process of waiting for these mail-in ballots to come in and be counted. I think, what we saw, prior to getting this ruling is just going to be a prelude to an even more massive anti-union campaign ramping up. So I'm sure, there's going to be, if not weekly meetings, maybe almost like bi-weekly meetings, if not more.
I've always said companies like money more than they hate unions. I found the company now that hates unions more than they like money. If I was a shareholder and watched the level they're spending here of anything to spend, I would be concerned. It's just a model. You couldn't take this model across the country.
The amount they're spending on all these executives?
Yeah, the amount you're doubling and tripling the store managers. That's going to up, and also people are just being jammed in and closing down stores. Walden Anderson, where we had over 80% signed up, and since we petitioned for an election, even though it was withdrawn for a technical reason, would normally be refound, it was closed as a cafe. Go away customers, go away workers, and the workers are dispersed into the airport Starbucks where they double up.
Some workers who attended his talk were confused by a story he told about the Holocaust, in which he noted only a small portion of prisoners in German concentration camps received blankets, but often shared them with fellow prisoners. Quote, so much of that story is threaded into what we have tried to do at Starbucks is share our blanket. Well, besides the absurd and offensive Holocaust analogy, my assumption is if they were sharing enough of the blanket, you wouldn't be trying to form a union right now. My assumption is if you were actual partners in the sense of the word, you wouldn't have to do what you're doing.
That's appropriate. The tone, from my understanding, and I had a previous engagement, so I chose not to change my plans to attend this, was that the tone that he used throughout was that of a father lecturing their children.